Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Streamed live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommy Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis. I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation, and I'm joined this morning by my good friend and my brother,
Tommy Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, Tommy. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I'm doing fantastic this morning again, Eric. It's a little bit rainy here in the Midwest, Southwest Ohio. But I'm excited about the weekend, getting a little rest, getting a little golf in, and good to be with you in the community as well.
Absolutely. We got us a club championship tomorrow, don't we?
We do. We have, and I took a look at the roster. We have a full slate of golfers that are going to be competing for the championship. It should be fun. It really should.
Right. And we know that it can go one of two or three ways. Our expectation is we want to really be much better than average. The likelihood is average, but there's always the below average performance that lurks behind every single golfer. And that's why we love the game. It's a very difficult game. It doesn't matter what direction you're going, man. That thing could turn on a dime. And but we're both grateful to be able to participate in something that gives us so much energy because it ties together a number of things that you and I value. Number one, lifelong learning. So we are both students, not just in the business that we do, but also in sports and almost anything else that we do. We love to kind of learn. And that's why the topic that we have today is going to be sort of so interesting and new for us because it's a term that people talk about a lot, sort of identity politics, but people, I don't think we spend enough time thinking about what is it, why does it work? Why is it so effective? Maybe even how has President Trump used identity politics so effectively? But also golf, for those of us that are athletic and sort of love, continuing to learn and grow, then it gives us all of those dimensions, man, as well as sometimes frustration, anxiety, and all kinds of other things. But looking forward to that this weekend. How was your week, Tommy?
Yeah, Eric, another great week, both administratively. We've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes with certain projects that we have to analyze data. We have to really review and assess the data. That's not always easy, but we have a great team with that, and I enjoy doing that, actually. And then the other is that I had a great opportunity at the week's end on Thursday and Friday, Eric, working with a client in Ohio. We're conducting an assessment, electronic survey, focus groups, interviews, and we're in the focus group period right now. And I really enjoy personally either the skill or the talent of making people feel at ease.
Yeah.
We were working with a law department and the police department, and oftentimes they're guarded based on the nature of their business.
Absolutely.
Right. And they're not as always forthright. And so as I was beginning a couple of the sessions, I had sensed the reservation, the uncertainty, the skepticism in some cases. I was sensing that. And there were times that I just threw in myself, and that was, I think I interact with human beings, right? Not machines. I think people really make organizations go as humans. In fact, I think that folks in this room may have a life outside of work.
Right.
Eric, and they were like, yeah, well, what are you talking about? And from that statement, when they said, yeah, what are you talking about? We have a life outside of work. And I circled back and said, so I would like you to share a little bit more about who you are and your lived experience at work, and that's only a small part of who you are. And then the floodgates came open and said, okay, yep, some of us have 20 years to go before we retire. Some of us only have 2 years. And I heard the breadth and depth of experiences lived within the workplace. And folks were exchanging stories. They were countering one another. They were complimenting one another. It was a rich conversation. Next thing you know, the hour is up, right? And they're all saying, wait a minute, we need more time. That's what I love about the work where we do, when it's so good in the dialogue, the diversity conversation, Eric, that folks say, we did not have enough time. We say it every week, but it's true when we're talking about human beings. We're very dynamic, very diverse, and ever changing and evolving. So my week went very, very well.
That's good, Tommy.
Yeah.
Tommy, as often we feel compelled to do, I want to sort of take this videotape of what you just said, and I want to slow it down just a little bit. And I want to go back, and I want to sort of put a special emphasis on something you did that oftentimes people don't want to do. You're doing a focus group. You're trying to learn some things about people. People come in the room apprehensive, quiet, laid back. And too often, Tommy, we believe that if we're in these rooms for a certain reason, we want to dive right into the reason. And we want to get people to talk about the real issues. Come on now, let's talk about the real stuff. Hold your feet to the fire. And you were wise enough to say, let's go to a place that will break this ice and that has the ability to create trust, because that is the only foundation I can build on effectively, is a baseline, a foundation of trust. So you went to a place where they got a chance to share more about who they were. They're probably shocked because they weren't expecting you to be interested in them as people first. And Tommy, you wisely did that. And then you created that openness that you could just see, and anybody that would be watching could see. And I would say that now you have something that you can build on for the long haul. There'll be people, you begin to separate people from their identity and their agenda. And you begin to connect with the common humanity. So that was just really powerful. You did it like it was nothing. You said it as though it was commonplace, but it's not. Yeah. And I want to just start by celebrating, make sure that people recognize that.
Thank you.
The other thing I would say, my week, Tommy, great week as usual. We love what we do. It's funny that, a couple of days this week, I showed up to work later. I usually get here before anybody, man. I'm glad to get up, perky, bright and early in the morning, get started. This week, I was a little sluggish a couple of days.
Yeah.
And so Judy was like, what are you doing still laying around the house? And I told my assistant the same thing. I said, Judy said, I said the same thing. I said, well, let me inform both of you all that sometimes I know that God has already gotten up early. He's already at the office. So what am I doing trying to rush off and make busy when sometimes the best strategy that we can apply is our faith? And I saw that happen even, Tommy, while I was at home. I got a call from somebody that said, I've been promoted to another significant position across the entire state, and you are my go-to person. So I have 2 or 3 things that I'm going, you can't think that up. You can't make that up. It just happens on your behalf. And Tommy, I would say to you that we have to keep reminding ourselves of that, because you and I are both doers. Yeah. We like to get in there and get it done. Yeah. The other experience that I had this week, Tommy, was I know that you've been overrun as well by these lead generation consultants all over. So it's like an algorithm. As soon as you open up one, then all the rest of the lead generation world says, there's somebody over here that's really looking for us. And so they give you all their bad strategies. And one finally got me on the phone. I said, look, I'm going to give you some advice. I said, stop trying to call me up and sell me on stuff. Just send me an email. Send me an email. Tell me what you do and what it's going to cost me. That's a better strategy. This notion of trying to eat up my time, it almost angers me, so don't do that. But one sort of broke through. And this woman broke through with a message of, hey, Eric, I want to see what your experience has been like with SHRM. My husband has spoken with SHRM too. And I just wanted, okay, interesting. You've done enough homework to know that I'm a speaker at SHRM. Your husband's a speaker at SHRM. Now we got a common, platform. And so I said, let's go ahead and have a conversation. We did. She was phenomenal. She's an AI expert. And so we started talking about my business and on and on. And so I said, let's go ahead and set up a meeting. And I asked both of my sons to sort of join in that meeting. And I'll tell you, Tommy, it was just so fascinating to listen to my oldest son, Eric. I didn't know that Ethan was watching, in another room, but he was online with us as well. And to listen to both of them sort of dissect the communication, the conversation, Tommy, was just powerful. To see what's in their mind and their thinking. I was like, wow, you all are really super sharp. And it's good as a parent to see your children operating in a different venue and what they're observing. My youngest was like, Dad, I don't think that she totally, heard everything that you were saying about your current sort of list of contacts and resources that you've not tapped. And so my other son was saying, no, I thought they did a great job. And even though we know how to do some of those things, we need the accountability of working with somebody and checking in on a regular. Wow. So I was just really, really pleased by that. The other things that happened this week, I had a chance to do some additional trainings. I had a wonderful experience, Tommy. Kathy Scrivener was working as a senior consultant with Integrity Development. And I thought that she would probably be the best candidate to serve as the director of diversity for one of our clients. And so she got in the process. They looked at a lot of different people and decided to select her. And it was sort of a bittersweet kind of thing, man. I was happy for her. We were cheering, but we also were crying, literally crying, man, because we've worked together for so long. But you know what, Tommy? I had the opportunity to experience my former senior consultant now as my client. And I told her, I said, you know what? I said, I don't think I've had that kind of encounter with a client that I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that they deeply cared about diversity and they deeply cared about getting this done right within the organization. I said, wow. I said, this feels so good to be working with somebody like you. And so she says, I'm still trying to get my feet under. I said, I know. I said, but let me tell you what I've experienced. You are the best that I've experienced in all these years in terms of a client, their understanding of this, and their unquestionable deep commitment to getting this right for the employees. And so that was just an honorable thing. One other thing that happened this week is had a chance to do some customer golf. I don't do that very often, but I had a client, a woman that had called me up, Tommy, I think I mentioned to you out the blue, and she wanted me to speak to some small business owners. They didn't have a budget. And at first I said no. And then God didn't let me rest. And God said, no, Eric, you got to do this. Money's not everything at all. Sometimes you just have to invest. And so I went and spoke to the group, and it went super well. And she sent me this nice note and said, wow, the most resistant in the group, you sort of broke them down in the first couple of minutes, and they thought that was the most profound presentation, So she wanted to say thanks. So her and her husband going to take me and my daughter, golfing, golfing. Then I said, hey, I'll invite my daughter. So I did, and we just had a blast, Tommy, golfing yesterday. I got a chance to go out. I love shopping. So I was out there shopping for all kind of outfits for my daughter and, getting her clubs all set up and everything. And we just had a wonderful time. But then after we finished 9 holes, the woman didn't want to, just go our separate ways. She said, do you guys have time for a drink? And so it was Friday. So we went to the sort of outdoors bar. And it was interesting to see how fascinated she was about my daughter. and how interested she was with her. And then she shared with us that her grandfather was a Klansman. Remember the Klan? And that I think her husband, I think her father was too. And just listening to Tommy, we don't know where some of these people are coming from to arrive at an interest in diversity. She was so passionate that please come speak to my group, because I was talking to her. She says, no, my group needs to hear you. But I could see that she was saying, my father and my grandfather need to hear you. And we don't think about that very often. And I was just grateful, man, that I said, boy, God has helped you to come a long way from where you started. And she said that when her father took her husband to one of the bars, and there was a big KKK sign up in the bar, Tommy. And the father asked her husband, what do you think about that? And he said, I think it's stupid. She said, so I knew I had married the right guy. She said, my father was, a little afraid of him because he couldn't believe that he would say something that boldly. So there are battles being waged out here, Tommy, that we don't always know of, man. And I'm grateful that we get a chance to see some of those things. So it was a great week, man. I love what we do, but I love who we serve and the fact that we get to lean in on our faith too.
Yeah, Eric, a shout out to you and your daughter and the client for having the conversation, getting to a point of some level of trust.
Yeah.
That this somewhat personal background might be shared.
Right.
And not only personal, but it could be controversial.
Yeah.
Right. It can there's some research out there that talks about the 21 ways to stop a diversity conversation. Right. And that could be one.
Right.
You offer up a polarizing type of topic.
Right.
And so this is polarizing topics on the surface may be connecting points underneath. And so when we talk about race, religion, politics, those are the three faux pas or don't go there topics. When we talk about those along with others, we may find out that we can, one, learn from one another, right? And then two, understand more about ourselves and what we're willing and able to understand, accept, maybe even tolerate. So when we're confronted with a person that has a connection with something that may be adversarial to me and my people, the KKK, do we stay engaged with that conversation?
Right.
Do we judge that person? Oh my gosh, your grandfather part of KKK? Right. I can't even talk with you, and I don't want to golf with you, and I can't do business with you.
Right.
Time out.
Right.
Time out. People have come along a road to this place that we have come together in this crossroad. And so how might we move forward possibly together? Right?
Absolutely. And Tommy, I'll tell you this, that we don't always recognize this, but that woman, she probably can count on one hand, maybe 3 fingers, maybe one, the conversations that she's had in her lifetime with an African-American, young professional African-American female.
Wow.
Has never really had those conversations. She was so fascinated by my daughter that at one point she just turned her back to me and she was just enjoying. And she told her, she said, I just think that it's so wonderful that you can be so beautiful and so feminine. She said, because I feel like a lot of times people in my cultural group, women of my age, weren't able to be feminine.
Yeah.
And so, but I know that so often, Tommy, people only see the stereotypes of us presented across the media. And they really don't know the variety of wonderful people that make up different communities. And it's really a reason why we need to get to know each other better, and not just the avatars or the stereotypes that exist about us. Tommy, this week we've chosen this topic of sort of identity politics, because politics is just so often in our airwaves. I think that it's important for us to begin to explore some of these conversations. We know that this is going to be one of the most consequential elections of our lifetime. We know that the last two have been that, and they have the ability to shift how we operate as a country, how we're seen around the world. And I believe that we can't just decide to choose our team and sort of just keep fighting blindly. There is this thing called identity politics that is influencing us, and it's exposing people to the fact that all this notion of we really are concerned about policies and all like that, and some are conservative. No, there's something bigger than that that gets our attention, and it's our identity and people's ability to leverage that in many ways to gain our support and almost to weaponize it against sometimes our own best interests. So I'll start by sharing this definition. You know, I've been taking advantage of a lot of Chat GPT and all these other AI algorithms and artificial intelligence sites to sort of help us to see, you know, what are the top 7 reasons that it's effective, and then even why it's been effective for the former President Trump, and then the pros and cons of identity politics. Identity politics refers to a political approach or style that focuses on the issues relevant to various groups defined by a wide variety of shared personal characteristics. So let's say it again. Refers to a political approach or style that focuses on the issues relevant to various groups defined by a wide variety of shared personal characteristics. Tommy, any thought before we go into sort of the top 7 reasons why it's effective?
Yeah, I think that for any person, there's a tone, right? There's a tone. There's that cadence, that vibration. And oftentimes another person's message may strike the tone. It may not always make sense. It may not always be clearly audible, Eric, but there's something about the message that resonates in my energy.
Right.
And some of that is part of that identity politics, where we have politicians and those who have the platform to be able to share their message. There are many more people than we think that message is resonating with.
Absolutely. So let's look at what AI has said are the top 7 reasons identity political strategies are so effective. Number 1, categorization allows individuals to categorize themselves into certain groups, creating a sense of belonging. This forms a strong psychological connection between the individual and the group, making them more likely to rally behind issues that pertain to their shared identity. Thoughts?
There's comfort in groups, Eric, that we as human beings, again, we don't want to be alone. And this is generally speaking, we don't want to be alone. And so if we could find a group, a category that we can connect with, that we don't have to explain ourselves.
Right. Million Man March?
No, we can affirm one another.
Right.
And so when we look at the categorization based on identity politics, it makes sense that I have almost an innate sense of belonging with the ideology.
Right.
And it can even tie into, Eric, not only me, but my family, my history,
right,
that I haven't clearly understood, but something again is resonating that takes me back 100, 200, 500 years of back in the day when things were quote unquote good. It makes me have a true sense of value and belonging.
Right. And then I'm just going to name off two more, and then I'm going to go to a third one that I really want to spend a little more time. Unification and visibility. Unification identity politics often centers around a common cause or shared experience, which can create a sense of unity. This shared identity can provide a powerful rallying point for political action. And then visibility, when marginalized groups are able to form a collective identity, they can increase their visibility and bring attention to the issues that affect them. This can help them advocate for policies that address their specific needs. Any thoughts about those?
Just a very quick thought, and then I'll throw a question to you. As you were saying that, I was thinking from a political landscape in the US, we basically have two parties.
Right.
Right. Now, there are other parties that have less visibility. There are people in those parties, right? American citizens and the like. But I was just thinking, why aren't they as visible? Even the independent.
Right.
We may hear a flare of an issue or a group, of just a little flare, and then it's explosion, and then it dissipates.
Right.
And then the loud ramparts of Democrat, Republican become resoundingly loud, right?
Right.
My question to you, Eric, is when we think of visibility, who are the marginalized political groups?
Right. I would say to you that that's interesting, Tommy. I would say to you that the strategy of both parties is to say to the masses that we hear you, we feel your pain, and we are committed to fighting for you. And so those political machines have so much power that they literally seek to assassinate and eliminate anything, anybody that could threaten their interest. And so you see right away, man, that I think the masses in this country, upwards of 70 to 80%, are center right, center left. There's only 3%, I think, that are at the extremes of right and left. And so the vast majority of people are actually looking for something more reasonable. But we get sucked in to the machines that are here to protect the institutions as they exist today. And so we get fear-mongered into saying, if we go for the independent, all we're going to do is hurt the side that of the two, that is most likely to be in your interest. And so everybody's trying to do a calculation on, does the third party, does it hurt the Republicans more, the Democrats more? And each of them is saying, no, it hurts us more, because they're trying to eliminate it so they can keep it down to two parties.
So with that being said, Eric, going back to unification, as you were talking, I could see where you have the term unification and then the term divisiveness.
Yeah.
Right? If I am politically inclined, I have a political identity. It works best for me as far as a unification perspective, where I am a part of a political side, where I'm focusing only on those issues that care for me and us. So unification in that sense is not about other people.
Right.
It's about me and us.
Right.
So the word divisiveness is really calling out the sides, right? It's not about unification. So when folks say, that language they're using is divisive.
Right.
That is actually a ploy to garnish and gather those in the unification of one side.
Right.
So if I'm Democrat or if I'm Republican, and I was like, oh, that language is divisive to the
Yeah.
Democrats,
Right.
right? And then other Republicans say, yeah, that is divisive. And then another Republican, yeah, now we have hundreds of, and then we have a couple of millions of people saying, yeah, that was divisive language, right? Isn't that right, Republicans? Then you have the big roar, yes.
Right.
And that effort is about, the big yes was, let us unify and stick together and let them
Exactly,
do what
Tommy.
they-
And
Yeah.
Tommy, if you can divest yourself from your emotion around your identity, then you could see these things operate on both sides.
Yep.
If you can only see it operate on the other side, then you aren't seeing clearly. It's interesting to me that, I mean, we see it in real time now that, and I see it most clearly with the Republicans, but I absolutely see it with the Democrats. So, well, with the Democrats, it was when Trump had all of the documents, then it was like, oh my goodness, top security document. Oh, can't believe it. The president, he's stealing them. Then when it came to Biden having them, then we were like, well, you know. So, you know, we just operate out of our own side and our own self-interest, and it blinds us at times to the kinds of things that can happen on our side. I know there were many things that I was not wanting to see clearly that President Obama did wrong because I was such a supporter of who he was and what he represented. Let's go to motivation. That's the next one, Tommy says. And I think this is interesting. One of the top 7 reasons why the identity politics is effective. Motivation. By focusing on the experiences and identities of individuals, these strategies can motivate people to participate in political processes. This can lead to higher voter turnout among the groups targeted by such strategies.
So with that being said, some may ask, is political identity or identity politics, is it good or bad?
Right.
Right? As I'm just thinking out loud, because we have had, you know, our evolution of voting rights. You know, at one time it was only white men that had property, and then white men, and then white women, and then we had other demographics. And so we have evolved into a more democratic process where we are electing based on the masses of its citizens, electing our leaders, political leaders. And then we had times where in our history that folks were not as motivated to vote.
Right.
My vote won't count. Nothing's going to happen. It doesn't matter. And then now, Eric, we had this new groundswell of individual identities based on politics.
Right.
Not as much gender, not as much race, not as much nationality. Over the last 10 years, over and over again, there's been a rise in one's identity. Folks are saying, I'm Democrat, I'm Republican, I'm independent, etc. And folks are going out in droves to cast their ballot. They're motivated to declare who they are.
Right.
And so, again, one may say, is it good or bad?
Right. I think it can be good, but it also can be bad, because what happens is, as a political strategy, they are oftentimes trying to take. So you might say to me that you've got to vote because conservatives don't care about your voting rights. We are the only one that cares about those, and they're being eroded. But then how does that line up with the Supreme Court that's sent back to 2 states? You got to redraw those districts because what you drew was biased.
Yeah.
So a conservative Supreme Court pushed back on states. So whites pushing back on other whites, Republicans pushing back on other Republicans. Motivation, identity politics on the left side would never say that Republicans or the conservatives would ever do that.
Right.
Because if they said, if they conceded that they might in some instances be reasonable, then they lose the power of their identity and the argument. So they have to create a zero-sum game. We are the only ones that are going to fight for your rights on this side. They won't at all. And so that's the motivation that they use to get us out there, is that your only hope is us. And I think that's inaccurate.
Yeah.
There is some truth to elements of it. And then if we feel like there's any risk at all on the other side, then we bail.
I'm also curious, Eric, where there are other countries in this world that have different political systems, some of which we agree with, some of which we actually established, we being Americans, through our years of doing what we do in this world. We established our form of political governance in these other countries. And other countries said, yeah, we have our own and we're going to do it this way. So with that difference, when individuals come from those countries that have a different political approach and then come into this country, become citizens and have the right to vote, and find that they are adapting to, embracing, assimilating to our process, and then developing their own motivation. What motivates them to go out to vote Republican? Although in their home country, their native country, I should say, there was no Democrat, Republican.
Right.
But now the American construct is baked into them, and they're motivated to get a group.
Right.
They're motivated. And I believe that the political strong arms of this country acknowledge that as well.
Right.
So literally, our political machines begin through media, through television, through radio, through all of the mediums, begin to spread their own message to other countries to motivate them to come into their camp, into their category,
right,
as well, before they even get here.
Right.
At times. And then once they get here, I hooked you, I can indoctrinate you, right? And just drag you into the boat.
That's it, Tommy. I mean, that nails it, man. And so that's what the major battle over immigration is. It's not about immigration. Right. It's about politically, who are these new immigrants going to benefit? And what people believe is that on the Republican side, they believe that, well, any of those that come through a meritocracy or a skilled, kind of thing, they may be more likely to be Republican. Those that are coming in from Mexico, and those that are walking across, those who are swimming here, they're most likely to be Democrat. Keep all them out. Yeah. So people are looking to navigate this in ways that benefit them politically and their power base. And so that's why we won't solve some of these things. The reason why Democrats and Republicans won't solve it is because there's a cost to celebrating immigrants. And Democrats even know that if you have Republicans feeling like they're taking our jobs when they're doing jobs that nobody wants, so then you have to sort of tamp down because you don't want to lose the moderates or the folks that are on the fence here in this country. But that's why we can't make any progress with a lot of these things, Tommy. We're just caught up fighting those kind of things. Let me go to the sort of let's look at President Trump and sort of how he made this work for himself. And I think that there's no question that he's been the masked sort of strategist, manipulator, controller of messaging. He sort of did this in a way that nobody anticipated. One of the things that was identified is he appealed to the disenfranchised groups. Believe it or not, Trump effectively appealed to groups that felt overlooked or ignored by traditional politics. This includes many working class citizens, particularly in rural areas or in industries that had been negatively impacted by globalization. Thoughts about his appeal to the disenfranchised And I would say as a caveat that most people of color would say that white people, how could they ever be disenfranchised? But I think that many have absolutely felt that way, and he felt like an ambassador for them. Thoughts?
Oh, absolutely disenfranchised because Donald Trump and those in that top 1 percentile of this country and this world do not think that those people are part of that 1%.
Right.
Right. So it's the puppet master
Right.
approach.
Mm.
So they are absolutely disenfranchised.
Right.
When if you have to uh, budget money to
Right.
pay bills,
Right.
if you have to work, be it with your mind or with your hands, to bring in income to pay for
Right.
your lifestyle,
Right.
you're part of the working class.
Right.
And you're working for the most part in an employer,
Right.
or you're working as an entrepreneur trying to chase down employment
Right.
every week, etc. That is the 99%, the
Right.
disenfranchised.
Right.
Eric.
Right.
The 1%,
Right.
their money makes money and they spend money on bills, etc. And it's not their money, it's other people's money.
Right.
We
Right.
can raise money, right, for a cause in the millions,
Right.
and it'll take care of whatever expenses I have.
Right. And so the problem for us, so if you get caught up so heavily in your own identity politics and you begin to stereotype that other people don't have anything in common with you, then you play into this narrative that is not helpful for your own interest. And one of the things that Dr. King knew that made him even more dangerous is that he recognized that poor whites were often disenfranchised in a similar way as people of color. And so he was beginning to bring people together, which made him even more dangerous.
Yep.
We cannot continue to act as though we don't have anything in common with middle class poor whites, and sort of just say that because of their race that they're on the other team, when we can all be on the same team with the same interests. But we throw that away as well, and then wonder why they go join the other team. Well, you don't want them.
Yeah, Eric, I'm laughing because as you were talking, I heard former President Trump's voice in my head, and I can envision watching television, and then there were some things that he would say that I would say, "What?
Right.
Is anybody listening to the same thing?
Right.
What was that?"
Right.
It is either a half truth, a lie, a disjointed message or comment,
Right.
a fragment, and then
Right.
he spurred into another field. And I'm trying to follow, and at the same time as I am grappling with the communication thread, the message thread, trying to connect the dots, I'm thinking there's a whole bunch of folks just jumping out of their seats, applauding, like, I don't know what you said. I didn't understand it. I think that was a backhanded slap
Right.
to me and my people, but you said it, and I'm with you.
Right. Right.
Right?
Right.
He said, well, I love, folks that are uneducated. Right? Yes.
Yay! Yay!
Too. Right? It said, that's why I'm here in your hometown talking to you all great people, right? Because I love you. Yes. Yeah. What? He
Desperate, abused, left out.
He loves uneducated people.
Right.
And then he's just said that's why he's here.
Right.
Does he think we're uneducated? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
But because of that appeal to the disenfranchised group, got you.
Right. And people in any group can be had the same way. Strong messaging. Trump was effective at crafting simple, direct messages that resonated with his base. He often positioned himself as a political outsider and a fighter against the establishment, which appealed to those who felt that mainstream politics no longer represented them.
Hey, Eric, we have to give Trump and his camp some credit.
Jeez.
We really do in this regard. To actually portray an image, an ideal that is almost diametrically opposed to the truth.
Right.
Right? All of this for one purpose, for him to be elected as the president.
Right.
So one narrow mission, one narrow purpose. And so his camp said, here's the pulse of what we believe will be our camp, our base.
Right.
Just keep messaging, strongly messaging to them in this regard. You're going to get some pushback from others that, question and actually hear what you're saying, but stay the course.
Right.
When you stay the course, to keep prodding and poking the base with the message, they will rise up, be motivated, and even defend you at all costs.
At all costs. And there are some things that they're getting out of this. They talk about his policies. We don't even know what policies he ever stood with. I mean, nobody really knows. But what we do know is that he brought in 3 conservative Supreme Court justices that did some things that some communities wanted to do and never thought possible. So he literally broke outside of the mold, and to some extent, then people value that. In other words, you can scare us that the opposite team might go rogue.
Yeah.
But we don't mind our team going rogue. We're afraid of the other team going rogue. But if our guy is willing to go rogue for our interests, oh my God. You couldn't find a better savior, an angel. I mean, from God, directly from heaven.
Yep.
Because he's willing to go rogue for our interests, attacking political correctness, any of the things that we fundamentally think are unfair. When we have a champion that's willing, we'll let them do anything else. They can steal all they need. They can take whatever money they need. I mean, it just doesn't matter. They can use their stuff any kind of way. They can break any kind of laws. It doesn't matter if they fight for those things that we believe at our core are in our best interest. Let me go to the pros and cons because our time's going to wrap up here. I want to go to the con side, Tommy, and I mentioned a term that I want to sort of reintroduce here for our audience to hear. So there are pros, there are benefits to identity politics, but there are also things that are not in our best interest. One of them that the cons that we are aware of, division, stereotyping, and assumptions, we're aware of those. I'm going to start with this notion of neglect of shared interest. So one of the cons, it can divert attention from shared interests that cut across different groups and from issues that affect society as a whole. What's the problem with us as being so focused on identity politics that we then lose focus on shared interests?
Well, a couple of things come to mind. One, with identity politics, unless the messaging is constant, which it is becoming more and more constant with 24/7 newsreels and media, unless it's that, then our identity is confirmed and or affirmed every political cycle.
Yeah.
Right. So now we are in that sense of belonging. We're in that group. We're in that category every 2 years, maybe every 4 years. The other is if the political outcomes are in our favor, then we are reaffirmed in our own identity.
Right.
If they're not in our favor, then our political identity and even personal identity is in question.
Right.
Right? It's in
That's
question.
good. That's good, Tommy.
And so simply because it's in question doesn't mean that we are not still part of that identity. It means now I may transition to how do we beat the other identity?
Yeah.
How can we increase the division
Right.
with the other identity? And we focus on that energy of revenge, get back, maybe even hate, maybe even just winning at all costs.
Right.
And that in and of itself usurps ourself.
Right.
As a person, as a citizen, as a human being, that I am more interested every 2 to 4 years of proving that I and we are right.
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 And so that's where it gets a little, there's some psychosis happening. The psychological impact of political identity.
Right.
Something that we need to research and study.
Right. And people literally for political ends have to demonize the other side so that you won't have any empathy for them or even see them as human. And when we hear those strategies come, our first reaction is that's outrageous. Who in the world could believe that all Democrats are pedophiles looking to rape and pillage kids? But they do.
They do.
All Republicans are racist and looking to take all your rights and put you back in slavery. Who could believe that? But we do. And so that's how strong these things are. There was a term, Tommy, that around what are the downsides of identity politics. A new term, I'd never heard this before. Identity essentialism. Identity essentialism is defined as identity politics can lead to the notion that identity is the single most important defining characteristic of an individual, neglecting the complexity and multidimensionality of the human experience. Tommy, I'm going to start there and say that for people of color, man, that's a real challenge for us. That sometimes you can get us so afraid that somebody's going to harm us because of our race that we then deny or don't recognize the complexity of the human experience and the multidimensionality of us as human beings. And I think that that's part of our diversity within communities of colors. We do kind of recognize that we have different issues at times based upon where we're positioned. But that, for me, man, that is one of the real concerns that I have is this identity essentialism, feeling like we're only defined as one dimension.
Yeah, I think I believe that that's a concept that's real, Eric. And the reason why I believe this is because when we look at the multitude of characteristics that human beings have, we call it the identity wheel or the diversity wheel, and how if it's your ethnicity, your race, and maybe some of those more innate personal attributes,
Right.
Ones that we cannot control.
That's right.
One may believe you can't change it, right? So I'm making that statement because it's just like what Lydia says here, that with identity politics, one may be declare themselves a particular political identity very strongly. Go back in their history to tell you and others why. They have voted over the years. They have the mindset and the ideology. They agree with particular platforms and views, etc. Then you talk to them in 3 months. Oh no, I've changed. I'm changed. I'm no longer a Democrat. I'm now a Republican. I'm no longer a Republican. I'm over here Democrat. I'm independent. Whoa, wait a minute. You are very strong in that identity. See, the paradox with this is when there's a human characteristic that one is born with, for example, I should say they have no control. There is, at this point, folks really debate it. In other words, you're African American and you say you're white. No, we got to debate that.
Right.
Because I'm going to tell you who you are, and you're that, and you're not white. You're not Caucasian.
Right.
Because that's your core identity. That's what I see. That's what I know. That's the category that I place you in. And in fact, you have accepted that category, that box.
Right.
All of a sudden, you want to think you can change. No, you are what I say, what you know, etc. But then we have the identity politics of, yes, it's essential to my identity now, but also there's an undercurrent thread of convenience.
Yeah.
At one time. And I don't want to overtalk this, but I am curious to understand. I'm curious to know, and I may or may not be here, in the next 30, 40, or 50 years, how will political, identity politics show up? How will it show up?
Right. I think that people are constantly trying to understand how I utilize identity towards my own political interest and means. And so that's what happens is people are interested in power. Today, the great battle is not over our time, but our attention. And there are billions, if not trillions of dollars at stake based upon who's in control of the political processes. So whatever angles they can use to control us as easy as possible, don't make the message too complex.
Yeah.
That's what they're going to do. And I think that's what we're seeing right now. But I think that it's going to change because so much access to information is available to us that you're not going to perpetually be able to control people. This is a short-term strategy, but they're going to try to get out in front of the game. I'll tell you, Tommy, we've got some rough roads ahead of us. It is going to get worse before it gets better. I'm almost certain of that. All the new technologies that are out right now. I mean, everybody that's talking about we've got to be careful with, artificial intelligence, and we have to really watch out for it. The people that are saying that are trying to learn how to do deep fakes. Yeah. And it won't be long before we see Joe Biden saying that I'm for lynching black people again. It'll be a Joe Biden lookalike. I mean, just anything, man. That's where we are. Mm-hmm. And each party has its most rogue agents. So it's not one party that has it. Each party has its rogue agents that are at the fringes that are trying to scare us. It's like herding sheep back into the barn. So they're trying to make sure you stay in your barn. And I would say to you, Tommy, that I have very little confidence in people's morality and their willingness to do right. Yeah. When the standards lower, it's as low as they go, each side will go there. It's just a matter of, do I go first or do I let you go first, criticize you, and then go? But that's what they're going to be doing. And so we got some rough road ahead of us. But I think that my faith says that we find our way out of it. But it's going to be through some additional pain.
We're moving toward that world of Total Recall.
Right.
The sci-fi movie and all of those sci-fi movies that project how the world is going to be with artificial intelligence and robots and these underbelly communities that are against the establishment, and then the establishment is up in the sky. Um, I'm not saying we're going to be there in the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years, but there's going to be some iteration of that complete dysfunction.
Right.
And confusion of what's true, what's real, who am I, what are we?
Right. Right. And I would say to you that in part, the powers that be and those that seek to control our resources are not really concerned about us checking out.
Hmm.
Because I would say to you that the more noise that is made in the real world, the more drive people will have to go to the metaverse.
Yep.
And other places. They'll throw on their goggles and they'll be in nirvana, Tommy. And while everybody finally gets their goggles, as soon as I can afford my goggles, I'm going to get them because I can get a fine woman with it. I don't even have to have no talent. I just design her over here in AI and she knows exactly what I want. All of that. That's where, if we're not careful, that's where people are headed. And then those few that are wanting to control the real universe will just continue to garner resources unto themselves. And I believe that, Tommy, the work that you and I do around engaging real people in meaningful, thoughtful conversation about how we collectively care about each other, the work that we do is going to become even more essential.
Yeah, I agree, Eric. I agree.
Final word, Tommy. We've gotten to the end quickly, man. I didn't expect to get here this quick.
Quickly, again, that's what happens when we're part of rich diversity conversations. Again, thank you, community, for joining us again on this Saturday morning with Eric Ellis and myself, Tommy Lewis. We look forward to seeing you once again next week, same bat channel, same bat time, on another iteration of Diversity Conversations. Take care.
Bye now.